So you're frustrated after a sales call. You didn't close that deal. The guy said they want to go think about it. You're like, what the fuck do you want to go think about it? Now you're frustrated. In your next calls, you don't close those ones because you're frustrated. And now you're frustrated about being frustrated. Been there. My name is Brian Choi. I made $228,000 and became number 2 rep at 7th level. I used to punch my wall and throw shit into my living room floor. I tried different things to calm the fuck down. A lot of things didn't work. Some things did. Here's 5 things I did to be able to better control the emotions I feel and actually perform better on the sales calls. Now, there's different reasons why you may be feeling frustrated after you didn't close a deal. A common one is because you're stressed out about money. It's because you need some money, you need to pay the bills, you need to go groceries, whatever it may be, and you need that commissions. And because you didn't close that deal, you're like, shit, like, how am I going to pay bills? I needed that for me, my family, whatever. And guess what? Now you have something called commission breath. Nobody likes those. And that's why salespeople have such a bad rep. And now it's not your fault per se, but it is still your what? It is still your responsibility to fix it. Now, different people respond to stimulus in different ways. For example, some people love performing under pressure. For some people, when they're tight on money, they're like, shit, let me go make things happen. Let me go take more sales calls. Let me go call more leads, and let me go get that money together. And then now they see a surge upward in the commissions. For some people, though, they respond to it a bit differently. Now, I could say, hey, just fucking buckle up and just go make shit happen. But that may not be an overnight change that you can make happen. So what do? What I'd recommend is, and you're going to hate hearing this, is go get a part-time job or go move back home. That way you're not stressed out about money. Okay? Because the worst position to be in as a sales professional is you're in scarcity mode and you need that person to say yes. You need that deal. You need that commissions. The moment you need something from somebody, you're fucked. Because that person has something that you want that you don't have right now. So what does it happen? Now that person has leverage in the dynamic and you don't. So now what happens on the sales call? Now you're kind of being approval seeking. You start to act weird. You sound different. And now with the moment you had to challenge the prospects because they had a limiting belief and it wasn't serving them, now you don't. And in objection handling, now you're being like super, super needy in a way that it's not productive. And the person smells that. And the person starts to shut down more and more and more, and they don't buy, and now you're frustrated yet again. So what you want, in that case, if you fall into that bucket, what I'd recommend is one of those 2 things. You will get a part-time job. It doesn't have a full-time job, right? You can go do Uber, you can do Instacart, whatever the thing is, okay? Or Starbucks, I don't care. Whatever thing that pays the bills that you don't need really to think that much. So preferably a job where they don't give you extra homework. So during this time to this time, from like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., you work, okay? And after that, you don't have to do work outside of that work. Just like, and you don't have to think that much during that job, okay? And ideally, if possible, during that job, if you can do other stuff that's educational for you, if you can actually call leads if possible, or if you can actually go through sales training during that time if possible, even better. A lot of jobs don't do that, which is fine, but at least a job that's going to cover your basic bills and you don't have to think that much, okay? So that's number 1. And the thing is, you may have to work extra hours. You may not have an 8-hour workday. That's fine, but if you're in the come up, if you're trying to make it happen, you're in the season of trying to make shit happen, really have breakthroughs in your life, then that's just what you got to do. Otherwise, if you choose to not do that, then you just got to be okay with the consequences, which is probably going to take you longer time. And if you're okay with it, then you're okay with it. So you go do that. But maybe you do have to work 6 hours a day from your part-time job, 6 hours a day from sales. Maybe you do have to do that, right? Or 5 hours, whatever you're okay with, whatever you're okay with the consequences, because everything has a consequence. So you go do that. Or you go move back home. You go move back home to your parents' house. You go crash at your friend's place, whatever it may be, where it can still take sales calls. So it's not a sexy way. It's not. But so let me tell you this. When I was first getting into sales, when I first got into sales, I was living in my parents' house. And so because of that, it allowed me to take bigger risks. So I was able to invest in sales training where it would have, if I were to live by myself and like if I had to pay rent and my food and all that, I probably wouldn't have made that happen because the pressure would have been just, well, not even the pressure, just the math wouldn't even add up. So because I was living in my parents' house, worst case scenario, I still have a roof over my head. And I'm not going to go starve to death because at least there's food in the fridge, which I'm very thankful for. And so because of that, now, as Gary Vee would say, now you can go on the offense. You can go into offense when other people cannot. So yes, is it fun? No. I was at the time about, I think I was 25 years old, 25, 26. As a grown-ass man, who wants to do that? Move back to their parents' house? No one really does. But you swallow your ego short term. That way, long term, you can become more successful. So it's short term thinking versus long term thinking, right? Now, at times, don't get me wrong, there are times to put your back against the wall, really make shit happen. I've done that too. But if it's really not helping you, if you really need that support, then that's what I'd recommend. Because when you do that, you have the peace of mind in the back of your mind. You're not getting lazy about it, but you have the peace of mind when you're on the sales call. You're like, at the end of the day, I can go through my process. I can just challenge this person, go through my sales process on the scripts to the best of my ability. And at the end, if not, if this person doesn't buy it, my life's not fucking over. I can still pay I can still sleep. I have a shelter. I have food. And that's all Gucci. Second thing is, who gives a shit? And it's a lot easier for me to say because you may be going, I mean, yeah, that's easier for you to say, Brian. So I used to think that too, because I'd hear from people, oh, just do your best. And at the end, they don't buy, then they don't buy. Who cares? I'd theoretically understand that. But also, I still got frustrated after sales calls because I'm like, man, like this person that wanted to change, but they don't change. They don't take action. They said they need to get outside the comfort zone, but they don't. This doesn't add up. Like, what's going on? And I should have closed that deal. Why couldn't I have closed that deal? And so the thing is, and I had that conversation with Matt Ryder, who was a CEO of Seventh Level when I was selling at Seventh Level at the time. And I was frustrated. And Matt would ask me, why are you frustrated? How much you make this month? I was like, 22 grand. And then he's like, you're a single guy in your 20s. You made 22 grand this month. What's the fucking problem? I was like, yeah, but like, I want to make more. I can do better. Da, 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 da. I was like, hey, man, if you threw the kitchen sink at the prospect and they still decide to stay shitty at sales, who gives a shit? So just insert whatever you're selling right now. If you decide to throw the kitchen sink at them, they still decide to stay obese. You threw the kitchen sink at them, they still decide to stay broke. You threw the kitchen sink at them and they still decide to have a shitty dating life, then who gives a shit? And that's really it. Because, and another thing that Jeremy Miner will tell me as well, Uncle Jay, is who has the problem? The prospect. Who has the solution? Us. You. So if they have the problem, you have the solution, what's there to feel stressed about? And so when I had these different couple instances, sometimes you have a concept, you kind of understand it theoretically, but sometimes you need to kind of hit from different angles or different ways of phrasing it to fully actually understand, right? So those are this couple moments that I actually understand, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, now I start to get it now. So I didn't get it like fully in that moment. Now I'm starting to think, okay, on that call, yes, do the best, add that urgency, challenge the prospects, do your reframes, go through your objection handling. Yes. At the end, if they don't buy and then you have to go to your next call, then dude, just fucking move on. Just move on. There's another thing that Cole Gordon, I learned from Cole Gordon as well when I was going through his program. And what he would say is, imagine that, okay, so each sales call is like a Tupperware if you ever do meal prep. So when you do meal prep, you cook a bunch of food and then you put it in a Tupperware, you put it like, you line it up nice to cook, right? So each call is a Tupperware. So after that, sales call, frustration, disappointment, whatever the thing is, you put it in the nice little Tupperware, you lock it, you put it in the fridge, and you open the next Tupperware. You want to compartmentalize each call. You never want to have the previous call bleed into your next one and vice versa. That's the worst place to be at, right? So at the end, yes, do the best on that call, move on to the next call, but don't give up on that lead though if you didn't close. Still follow up with those people because it's not over, right? But if you get all frustrated and then the prospect sees that on the follow-ups, they may not pick up or they may not be receptive to you, right? So obviously, go the farthest you can go with that prospect. Don't give up on objection. I'm not telling you to go soft whatsoever. I'm saying go to the farthest you can go. And after that, still follow up and move on to the next one. Third step is an interesting one, which is having stuff going on outside of work. I was living in Colombia, Medellin, for about 3 months. And during those 3 months, I made the most amount of money. I think during those 3 months, I had my 36K month, and I think I had my 24K month and my 26K month, I think. So it comes out to like 86K around 86K in commissions in the 3 month period. And during that time, I didn't have any social life. I saw people, hung out with people maybe once a month, maybe once or twice a month. Okay, maybe 2 to 4 times, not a lot, essentially, right? Maybe 1 or 3 times a month. Like on an occasional date, very rarely. I think I went on like maybe like 3 dates during that 3 months I was there. And I hung out with people maybe like twice or 3 times. So not a lot. It's because all I was doing was, okay, take sales calls. After the sales calls and before, I'm doing my follow-ups. I'm doing my sales call confirmation to make sure people are showing up. I'm going to the gym. And after that, I'm debriefing. I'm looking at my call, looking at my game tape. That's all I'm doing. Now, that is all fine. And then it sounds great. And it is because I had my highest months. But what ended up happening was that I felt very tense, right? I was very tense that it was not sustainable. I was very tense. I was very stressed out because it's not like I was working like 100 hours a week, but I was working around, depending on the month, anywhere between 50 to 60 hours a week, right? That's what I was working. And so it's not a crazy amount of hours, but it is quite a bit. And because of that, I could have probably done more. But during that time, because I didn't have stuff going on outside of work, it felt a lot more than it was because I'm like, this is all that I'm doing right now. I don't have a life. And the problem with that is if something's the only thing you're doing, what happens then? Well, you put a lot more importance on that thing because why? It's the only thing that you have going on in your life because all your attention and focus is there. Now, that's a good place to be at if you're in the beginning, especially like if you're sacrificing and so on and so forth. But we got to understand seasons because most of us are not David Goggins, right? We're not Kobe Bryant because it sounds good because Kobe's like, you know what? I sacrificed my entire life. All I was doing is in the gym. And that's great. That's why he was one of the greatest of all time. But and I would kind of shit on when I saw basketball players like Allen Iverson or like those kind of players where they're going out to the club and popping bottles and stuff like that. I was like, man, like if they're like Kobe, they'll be like a lot better. But then I get that too because that's what they want to do. And on your sales calls, you get very tense because all you're doing. And because of that, prospects start to feel that. They kind of start to shut off a little bit. And now you start to lose out on sales that you could have closed because they feel too like what's wrong with this guy? He's like a psychopath. And I remember I was doing a role play one time, and then Matt was like, all right, Brian, now let's do that again without looking and sounding like a psychopath. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, dude, you look way too tense. I was like, do I? And I look back at the recording. Then later I was like, I do look tense. You know what I mean? So yes, I had my breakthrough months and I don't regret it at all. I think we should all have moments like that, seasons like that, where we're going balls to the walls, but also it's not sustainable. So, but then what happened was then I moved to Dubai, and then Dubai, I was doing pretty much the same thing. I saw my breakthrough months. I had the most amount of upsells in a single month, so on and so forth. But I'm like, at one point, I'm like, man, I want to live life a little bit. So it's not like I took down all my sales call and all my working hours all together, but I was working about maybe like 40 hours, 45 hours a week, which is like kind of like a normal work week. But on the weekends, at least, I started going on dates. So on the weekends, I was going on dates, maybe like 2 dates a weekend, right? 2 dates a week, so on and so forth. On the weekday, I was pretty much working. And because during that, now I felt more relaxed and more chilled out. And part of it is because if you're watching this as a young man or man in general, when we have female presence in our life, it tends to really help us chill the fuck out. Because with male energy, there's masculine energy and feminine energy, right? We're kind of getting woo-woo here, but bear with me. So masculine energy is penetrative, right? So in sexual intercourse, male's the one actually penetrating the vagina, right? If you want to put it graphic like that. Now, that translates to how males operate in general. For example, when you're approaching a girl, most of the times the guy's going to go approach the girl. Most of the times the girl's not going to come to you, right? Same thing when we're approaching sales calls. On the sales call, the prospect's not going to lead the conversation. They're just not. If you're letting that, now you're a leaf in the wind. You're just hoping that the prospect buys and they say something good. But what exceptional sales professionals do on the sales calls is they lead the conversation. They're a leader, right? They're not letting shit, like hoping that shit happens. Like, okay, so what about this? Okay, tell me about this. They're leading the conversation, right? So that's very like charging dominant masculine energy. Whereas the feminine energy is like, they're like, they're chilled out. Nothing's a problem. Like, hey, like, like, let's go out to this restaurant. Like, they don't even say that. Like, because the guy's like, hey, let's go out here. And then the girl's like, yeah, like this. Like, everything's all Gucci, right? Like, but and at times we don't understand that because we're like we're the ones solving the problems. We're the ones planning shit out. We're the ones charging. But at times we do need that kind of counterbalance because otherwise we get too tensed up. So what the feminine energy does, and at least in my experience, what I found is by hanging out with girls, they're just smiling, they're laughing, they're eating their sushi, right? They're giving you a massage, and then you're just hanging out. It just like makes you calm the fuck down. And something that Will Hinkson said, which is, as a salesperson, if you're just fucking tensed up, you're not making the money you want to make. Yes, work hard, sacrifice, learn, but also if you're too intense, get laid, get a dog. And I remember him saying in a sales sniper retreat. I wasn't there at the retreat, but I saw the recording. And I'm like, at that point, I was like, do I need to really? I think I just, post the walls. But I start to get it now because there's a time and place for everything, right? So there's different spectrum in life. There's a pendulum, right? One side is the extreme and the other side is the other extreme. So if you're in the other extreme or too tense to the point where it's becoming detrimental, then maybe you need to go this way a little bit. And if you go too this way, if you're doing too chill, too like kumbaya, if it's not helping you, then yeah, maybe you need to go the other way. But the thing is, we're never static in one station. We go this way and we go that way. We adjust like a music equalizer. And that's, I guess, the fun part about sales and life. We're us trying to figure this out is that if it's static, then we don't need to fucking problem solve because like we fix it one time, it's good forever. That's just not how it works. Because, for example, if you leave a garden and if you don't maintain it, then the flowers are going to fucking die and the crops are going to die. And that's just how it works. That's how life works. So what I found is, okay, so I started going on dates and I started having sex again for the first time in a while. And it started to relax me the fuck out. And I know it's a bit of a taboo topic, I guess, but I do want to talk about it because, people in sales, at least in sales, we don't really talk about it. But I think it's an important topic that most people don't talk about. Most gurus and trainers just talk about the tonality, objection handling, and the scripts, which are fantastic. Yes, learn that. But there's the other parts as well, is that we're sales professional and we're salespeople, not sales robots, right? So when you're having those conversations, I found, especially when you're talking to like people, women, whatever it may be, then now you're having normal conversations with people, and that translates into your sales conversations. And now you can actually joke around with the prospect in the beginning. You can actually help them disarm. You're not some quote unquote script robot. That's what I found in my experience. And, I'm still learning about human interactions, human dynamics. Until 19, I was socially retarded. I couldn't even look people in the eyes and talk. I still think I have a long way to go in my communication skills. A lot of people say that, yeah, you're a great listener, you're a good communicator, so on and so forth. But I think I'm just only scratching the surface. I genuinely mean that. I'm not trying to sound humble. I genuinely mean that. I don't know shit. I'm just sharing what's worked for me so far. If you can learn from that, fucking fantastic. Fourth thing I did that worked for me is looking at your data. You're already falling asleep, but that's exactly what we want. Because you know how when we get prospects to in the logical brain by giving them too many details, they read the contract, or they just have too many numbers to go through, then now they get in the logic brain and now they don't make a decision and they don't buy, they don't take action. That's kind of what I found helps for me, is getting myself in the logic brain so I'm not caught up in the emotions. Because we have the logic and the emotions, right? And so the emotions is you're not thinking at a rational state. You're like, fucking frustrated. That guy, like he said he want to buy. You're in that kind of chaotic moment. But when you're looking at your numbers and your tracker, and I built out my own data tracker because I've tried different spreadsheets, I've tried different like paid softwares, and they don't really get the job done on the data I need to track to do what I want to do. And I built out my own data tracker, and it's great. And in that, I found that when I'm looking at my numbers, like, okay, how many calls showed up? How many calls were booked? How many sales? And what's the biggest objection I'm losing the most sales to right now? What's the slot utilization rate? How many upsells am I making right now? How many follow-ups am I making right now? How many referrals I'm getting? When I see that, I'm like, okay, so this week that happened. This week compared to last week, this metric went up. Now you do that. Now your brain goes into the boring logical side, which is what you want to do on that side. Sales, I found, is a weird paradox because our job is to get the prospect to an emotional state, right? The whole point is that way the prospect takes action and actually buys. And we're having these emotional conversations all the time especially because we sell coaching, right? So they're maybe in a job that they hate. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They feel frustrated, or they're overweight. They don't like it. They don't feel confident. They don't like their dating life, whatever it may be. Most of us are having emotional conversations, and we want that. But for ourselves, we want to set the emotions aside to the much of as best of his ability. We just want to set the emotions to the side and think rationally and as objectively as possible. Now, that is not an easy feat per se, because as human beings, we're emotional creatures. We all know we make decisions based on emotions and justify logic. Yes. But to the best of our ability, especially when we're problem solving our sales, we want to think as objectively and based on facts and numbers as much as possible. We don't want to do guessing games here. That's just not how it works, whether it be business or sales. So instead of saying like, oh man, my numbers are going down, or man, my close rate went down, it's just not, I'm just not, am I in a slump? What's going on? But if you track your data, maybe you understand that from the previous week to now, the markets, they changed something with the marketing, right? So what happened was this. So one of my first offers, I was selling a biz op, and I was leading the team. I was outselling the other 3 reps combined by myself. And what happened was overnight, my show up rate and my close rate halved. Okay, it halved overnight, not just for a few days, but for like a week, or like 2 weeks. It was kept going on. I was feeling so frustrated that I was like screaming into my pillow. I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, I was doing that before I go to bed. That was my nighttime routine at that time. And I was feeling so frustrated. Then I realized that because they changed the advertising targeting, because at the time they were only targeting Australia, then they started wanting to expand to the US. So they were doing the US leads. Now, what ended up happening there is that Facebook ads and advertising, it sounds all simple, right? Hey, you give money to Facebook, Zuckerberg sends out the ads, and all of a sudden, like, you double, triple your ROAS, and then now you get more sales calls, and then it's the same. It doesn't work like that because it's a machine learning algorithm, Facebook ads. And so what's happening is they got to figure out what kind of leads, what kind of audience like to see that kind of advertising targeting. And so during the process, you may get a lot of shitty leads. People that are not even interested in starting a business if you sell biz up. People that are just, they have no fucking idea what's going on. And that's exactly what happened. And also what I realized was it wasn't only me, because I looked at the team tracker. No, the entire team's show up rate and close rate basically plummeted overnight. So when that's happening, now I start to get a feel for it. You're making this an excuse like, oh, like it's not my fault, it's all the marketing fault. No, but now it's like, oh, I understand what the root cause is now. So because of that, now you're like, you don't need to feel frustrated anymore. You're like, okay, cool. So that's what's happening. So how can we fix it? Right? So there are things within your control, and there are things maybe not within your control. You fix the things that are within your control, and you go to people that can change the things that are out of your control with solutions. You don't go to them as like, hey, so show up rate went down, and leave it at that. And it sucks because guess what? Your sales manager, the business owner, whoever it may be, nobody likes to have more problems. Neither do you. Nobody likes to have more problems. People have enough problems they're dealing with already. So if you become another person, another problem you're adding, then guess what? They fucking start to hate you. And it becomes more difficult for you to get more opportunities within the company and move up in your career. So what I really, really, really focus on doing in my sales career is that going to people with solutions. Go to my prospects with solutions. Go to my sales managers. Go to my business owners with solutions. That's exactly what I did. Okay. And in my last company too, like I realized that we're losing out on a lot of revenue and commissions from not being able to upsell people because there was issues with the client delivery. So I put out a whole Google Doc and like a 20-minute loom. Hey guys, these are the specific challenges, the specific reasons. This is what's causing it. And here's my plan. Here's my solution. I've already implemented some of that already. It's been already helping me. And so if we roll out to the entire team, I think it'll help all of us. So what do you think? And CEO Matt at the time, he saw that loom. He's like, hey, this is the best single feed of feedback that I've ever gotten. I'm going to implement it. I'm going to fix it. And he did. And then now they fixed that issue. And fucking phenomenal. Everybody wins. So you want to do that. But look at your data, objectively understand what's going on, identify the root cause, find a solution very, very objectively. Right. What I also used to do as well, I have a Google Doc and I would have a template for it. Whenever I'd get frustrated, I would call it like a problem solving doc or something like that. And so what I'd say, hey, what's the fucking problem? I'm not closing deals. I feel frustrated. Okay. What is causing it? What is the root cause? Well, the biggest objection I'm getting is think about it objections. All right, cool. Was there any changes with the marketing or external factors outside of my sales calls? Yes, no? Okay, cool. Did I change anything within my sales call or my script? Or did I change anything on my sales call confirmation process outside of the skill set, outside of the call and my process? Yes, no? All right, cool. So what do I got to do? All right, cool. So I could either learn how to handle it by getting better at fear reframes, or I could learn how to get better at preventing it by adding more urgency. And usually prevention is better than actually handling, right? So I'd go to the prevention, I'd fix that. What's my actual plan? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down my successful calls where I didn't get to think about objections. Oh, I went actually deeper into the emotions and the cost of inaction. So, and I started not going as deep because I got lazy or whatever the reason is. So let me go deeper again until I get the real emotions. So, you know what I mean? And then you want to have that. And you want to have enough data sets because if it only happened for like a few times, then typically it's not enough data for you to actually make a decision and start feeling emotional about it. So what you want to do is you want to stress test, meaning to put enough volume through it, at least 20 or 30 different instances in sales. So 20 or 30 different sales calls, for example. And after that, you can start to believe and actually say, hey, I think this is going on, start to make changes. But also another thing I learned from Matt is you want to find reasons not to make changes. Okay. And you want to find reasons to make as small changes as possible. That's what you want. Less is more in that instance, right? So during that instance, okay, so do I need to change anything? Yes, no. Okay, cool. If I have to change something, let me just change this one thing, not a whole bunch of things, because then we don't know what changed what. One thing, we're going to change it, nothing else. And then we're going to go through 20 or 30 different sales calls that showed up next week. And I'm going to mark it on my tracker. I changed this one thing. Next week, I'm going to see what happened there. Okay. And the thing is, your hypothesis may have been right or wrong. So just like a scientist, just like an engineer, you set a hypothesis. I think if I do this, this will happen. That doesn't mean that will happen. You don't get disappointed by it. You don't set high expectations. You think, well, let's see what happens. Having a genuine curiosity for it. So next week, it did fix it. Great. That was the issue. Let me keep doing that. If it didn't, well, let me try this other thing. And just one thing I repeat. Boring as fuck, I know. That's just how we solve problems. Fifth one is going to be very woo-woo, which is letting the emotions be there, allowing the emotions to be there. So I was kind of hesitant to putting this out because I'm like, should I really talk about this? Because it's very woo-woo. And I'm very not woo-woo. I'm very analytical. I'm very technical. I'm very tactical. And I'm not like a mindset guy. It's like, hey, I have a growth mindset, yada, yada. I'm not really about that. But this has helped me. So this is why I share. What I used to do when I feel frustrated is I'll try to resist it because I'm like, I feel pissed off. No, don't feel pissed off. Don't feel pissed off. Okay, positive mindset, positive mindset. The issue with that is there's a saying, whatever you resist persists. So whenever you try to fight that emotion, what ends up happening is in the beginning, on the surface, it seems like the frustration or the emotion is kind of going away. But what ends up happening is it's not going away. It's just getting bottled up more and more and more. And then, like a volcano, at one point, there'll be one small instance and it fucking erupts like a volcano. And then you'll take that out. If you're like me, I used to punch my wall. I used to throw water bottles into the fucking living room. Or in my day-to-day life, I would just be passive aggressive or I would snap back at people. And so, which is no bueno because it means that you haven't really fixed the root cause. It's just you're doing a band-aid solution. So what has helped me was this. Whenever I feel an emotion, and there's a difference. I don't say, oh, your emotions. I don't say that. It's the emotions you feel. Okay. And I know it's also woo-woo, but I like to train my brain that way because if I say my emotions, it's almost like I'm attached to the thing. But if I say the emotions that I feel, the frustration that I feel, then I don't have to be that much attached to it, right? Like small tweaks, maybe like a minutia thing in the language. Like I don't really always say that, but I kind of like to at least view it that way. Because okay, so emotions, they're just chemicals in our body, in our brain. It's fucking normal. So again, number one is it's normal. It's fine. No need to freak out. It's normal. We all have emotions. We're humans. Great. If we didn't, then we'd be psychopaths and robots. And even though I may look like a psychopath, I'm not. I don't know, at least I don't think. So okay, so that's number one. Number two is you locate where you feel that emotion. So emotions, you can actually identify where you feel it. For example, typically whenever I get frustrated or pissed off, like after a sales call, I'm like, man, I should have closed that person. I tend to feel around my gut area here, between my chest and my belly button, like kind of in the middle of my guts. I feel like a burning sensation, almost like it's kind of burning inside. I do tend to feel that. That's where I feel it. For some people, it's more towards here, towards the chest. For some people, it's the throat. For some people, more towards the belly button. Okay. Or it could be their face, but typically around this area, they'll feel that, right? And how you feel that is by getting out of your head and into the body. And I know, again, sounding woo woo. I think it's a Tony Robbins concept, but he says, if you're in your head, then you're dead because you're just overthinking. But what you want to do is actually be present. And how you do that is kind of like muscle mind connection when you're working at the gym. So when you're working at the gym, I'm not a fitness guru, but this is what I learned from different people is if you just do bicep curls without just like, if you're just going through the motion, you try to squeeze, you may get some growth, but you actually get more growth, apparently, if you actually put your brain into the biceps, meaning that you actually concentrate on the biceps. You actually feel the sensation, then you can squeeze out more and you tend to get better growth or whatever, right? But how you do that is actually paying attention to the sensation in your body. So get out of your brain and you get into the part of your body. And in my case, it's here. And maybe as an exercise, you can do that too. Where do you feel it? So here you allocate it great. And what you do is instead of resisting it, you let it sit there. It's like, hey, it's fine. Hey, frustration, you're here? Cool. No worries, man. Sweet. You just let it sit there. You don't have to talk a lot like that, but it's kind of the attitude, at least the one I have. So it's like, all right, it's here. Yep. Sit there. Normal. I'm not fighting it. It's fine. I'm getting comfortable with it. And what's up happening is, and you want to make sure you're breathing deep, right? Most people breathe from their nose to their throat and back and forth here. But when you do that, you start to get more anxious. And that's why people say they have like anxiety or whatever, because they're not breathing properly. But the thing is, your physiology can change your psychology. Tony Robbins talks about this too. Physiology means if you just breathe through your belly, just by doing that alone, you're pumping more oxygen into your brain. So guess what? You can think more clearly. So it's just physiology and biology, and that's going to beat a lot of the psychology tactics, right? So you breathe and you let it sit there, especially in the beginning. It may be there for a while. That's fine. If you're on the sales call, just let it sit there. If you're off the sales call and you have some time, like during your lunch or whatever, that's fine. Let it be there. Either way, okay? So breathe, let it sit there. Eventually, it will evaporate into the air, okay? So instead of trying to fight it and getting bottled up in, if you just let it sit there, you breathe in, you let it sit there, then eventually it will evaporate and you'll have a better yield than try to fight it and you actually exploding like a volcano. And also another thing too, what I also used to do is, you know how when let's say a friend comes to you, they're like so frustrated, right? They're like, this girl, she ghosted me. Like, what the fuck? What is all this? And they're frustrated. You're like, that kind of sucks, but you're not as, I guess, invested. You're their friend, so they're like, yeah, this sucks, but you're not as frustrated as them. Why is that? Because you're a third party. You're not the first person. You're a third person. Therefore, you're not that person, so you don't feel that emotionally invested, right? So that's kind of what you want to do. Imagine all the frustration you feel. You say that to a friend that's not in sales, right? And you explain to them, it's like, I feel so frustrated. They're like, what happened? Oh, on the sales call, this person didn't buy. They're like, okay, so like what happened? Well, basically it's a Zoom call and then you talk to them and they said, let me think about it, and they didn't buy. They're like, how much was it? It was for $5,000. I mean, it's quite a bit of money. Like, yeah, but they said they want to do it. Yeah, I guess. You know what I mean? So if just try to explain this to a friend that's not in sales at all. Okay, maybe say this to your parents or a friend that's not in sales, and then they'll be like, I guess that kind of sucks, I guess. But they don't really get it. They're not as frustrated because it's kind of nuts in the grand scheme of things, right? So Herman just said this: if you zoom out from the Earth far enough, then all you see is a little dots in the galaxy. And the thing is, there could be different galaxies. There could be different, there are different galaxies, but there are different universes maybe, right? Parallel universe, who fucking knows, whatever you believe in. But if you zoom out far enough, it's not that fucking important because we're all going to die, right? We're all going to die. So it's really that. So what I'm trying to say is, what I used to do is I had a visual image in my head, whether close your eyes or not. But I would imagine myself and from looking at from a top corner of my room and looking at myself almost like I'm having an outer body experience. And so I'm looking at myself being frustrated from a Zoom call this person didn't buy. And if you're looking at that, you're like, dude, it's not that bad. Okay, so it's not that bad. So if you want to have that kind of perspective from a third person perspective, because you're not going to be that emotionally invested. It's like, you're not that serious. So I found that helps as well. I know it's very woo-woo. And I don't know if you're gonna resonate with it at all. Maybe I need to do a better job explaining it, but that's what I've done, and that's what's helped me. And really, the last one is patience. And something Matt Ryder would always say and always tell me is that time takes time. And that would be such a frustrating thing for me to hear, because if you're like me, then you want to do better. You want to get better. You want to get there. You're driven. You want to get to your goal. You want to be in fucking Dubai. You want to be in Europe. You want to travel the world, get that Rolex. You want to retire your parents. You want to do all of that. But getting better at sales takes time. Doesn't matter what the gurus told you. And it's frustrating, right? Especially because when you first got into high ticket closing, high ticket sales, what do you market it to? You market it to, oh, dude, you can master sales within 90 days. It's super easy. You get your laptop, you sit from the beach in your pajamas, take 3 warm calls a day. They're warm calls. They're ready to buy. They have your credit card. You just answer a few questions. You just read from the script. You can master sales within 90 days, and you'll make 20 grand a month. Be a high ticket closer. That's the marketing message these days. And I get it, because it may not be your fault. It's still your responsibility, though. We all know that. But I'm here to tell you, I'll be the first person to tell you that getting better at sales takes time. And if you look at your favorite sales gurus, it took them a long time to get to where they're at. And it took them a long time to get better at sales. Doesn't matter what they tell you, right? If you look at someone like Matt Ryder, even he'll tell you too, yeah, dude, it took me like 10, 12 years to get to where I'm at. Before that, I sucked at sales. Same thing with all the big sales gurus. It may look like they came out of nowhere, but it really didn't, right? Me too. When I first got into sales, yeah, like I went from like 2K a month to like 8K, then like 15K, 20K, 30K in the first year. And it seems like it's an overnight thing, but it's not, because prior to that, I studied copywriting. So I already understood at least a little bit of buyer psychology. Like, the thing they talk about in sales, or Jeremy talks about, problem awareness, solution awareness, all that. I read a book about it before sales. It's called Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. He talks about it. Unaware, problem aware, solution aware, broaden aware, product aware, all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm like, oh, like you need to get to that place. And it's not about the feature. They don't buy the drill, they buy the hole so they can hang around their family photo so they feel good about it. That's what they're buying, right? So I already understood a lot of that. And I was reading sales books like 10X Rule and Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone, Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. I didn't even know I would get into sales one day. I just wanted to read about it because at the time I was trying to become a better communicator, because I wanted to get laid. I wanted to get girls. And I'm like, well, let me read these books because it's communication. So I didn't know I'd get into sales one day, but I still read those. And also, I would go out at one point, at one summer, I would go out every day. I was cold approaching random strangers on the street, like 50 strangers a day, whether it be girls, whether it be just random old men. I would talk to them because I was so nervous and anxious talking to people. I couldn't even look people in the eyes. I would stutter way too much. I still don't talk perfect, but like even go back to the old videos on my YouTube channel from 7 years ago. Yo, this is Brian coming to you straight from Seoul, Korea. I'm sitting here in Gangnam Square. I thought about archiving those, but I left a lot of those there because I wanted them to be a reference, not only for me to look at, but also for you to look at, is that time takes time. It's so fucking cringy for me to look at those. And it's just a lot worse, but I kept it there. It's like, oh, I've got a lot better from 6, 7 years ago. Not just like sales, because I wasn't even in sales back then, but just talking to people. And I'll look back at this a year from now, 7 years from now, and I'll be like, I'm cringing, I want it so bad. But that's exactly what we want. And time takes time. But isn't that the whole point of life? I know it sounds frustrating, but if we look at it from that angle, isn't that the whole point of sales communication? Because I don't know about you. I want to be an incredible communicator. I want to be an incredible, like these YouTube videos. Yeah, it's good because like it helps me get traffic, get more followers, more subscribers, and I get sales from that. It's great. But also it's an excuse for me to practice my communication skills, the way I speak, the way I articulate, my tone, my facial expression, my body language, all that kind of stuff. So it takes time, but also here's a caveat. What Gary Vee would say, micro speeds, macro patience. What you don't want is the other way around, which is micro patience and macro like impatience, whatever the thing is, right? Because in your day-to-day, you want to have urgency. Call their leads. After you're done with sales calls, fucking debrief. Feedback session. What did you do well? What could you improve on? Where did you fuck up? Get feedback from a coach or trainer if you have to. Or don't, but do something, right? And also during your no-show time, be urgent. Call leads. If you talk to more people, you'll feel less frustrated because you have more at-bats. And also you get better at sales in a shorter amount of time. That's what I did during no-shows. I called leads while everyone else watched YouTube. Okay. So because of that, not only am I having more at-bats, more opportunities to make sales, but also I'm getting more opportunities to get better. And that's what you want. Right? Because we cannot control the outcome of making sales and the commissions, but we can control the inputs that we're putting in. So micro speeds, but in the macro, understanding that yes, it will take time. What are you going to do in the meantime? Are you going to watch YouTube, go on random walks? Are you going to do random role plays that's not helping you? Or will you actually call leads, get better that way? And after your selling hours, will you do the feedback sessions, whether with yourself or your sales manager, trainer, whoever it may be? It doesn't have to be me, to actually get better. Hope this helped. Let me know in the comments. Talk soon.